The gym was alive with the sound of bouncing basketballs, sneakers squeaking against the polished wooden floor, and the sharp calls of players passing and shooting. The air carried the faint scent of sweat and resin, the usual smell of late afternoon practice. At the far corner, moving quietly and unnoticed, was Jywin, the team's ball boy. He wasn't tall, nor was he particularly athletic. His job was simple: fetch stray balls, wipe the floor when it got slippery, and stay out of the way. He blended into the background so seamlessly that most people forgot he was even there. But his eyes never stopped following the star of the court, Minho. Minho was everything Jywin was not: tall, confident, and the pride of the basketball team. His jump shots drew gasps, his fast breaks dazzled the crowd, and his energy seemed endless. Every move was sharp, precise, and commanding. Jywin's heart raced as he watched Minho dart across the court. The way the ball left his hands, so controlled, so natural, made Jywin's chest tighten. "Why am I always staring at him like this?" Jywin muttered under his breath, clutching the mop handle a little too tightly. It wasn't just admiration. It was something deeper, something heavier, and something he didn't dare name out loud. Practice finally came to an end. The players laughed and teased each other as they packed up, towels draped around their shoulders. Minho lingered a little longer, wiping sweat from his forehead. As Jywin bent down to gather the last ball, he froze when he realized Minho was walking straight toward him. "Hey!" Minho's voice was calm, casual, but to Jywin, it thundered in his ears. Jywin's head snapped up. "Why yes," he stammered. Minho smiled, a grin so natural and easy it made Jywin's chest burn. "Thanks for helping out every day. We'd be lost without you." Before Jywin could reply, Minho tossed him a water bottle. "Here. You look like you could use it." Jywin's fingers trembled as he caught it. His face turned crimson and he quickly looked down. I'm just doing my job." Minho chuckled softly, clearly amused by the boy's shy reaction. "Still, you do it well." With that, he slung his bag over his shoulder and left the gym, leaving Jywin standing there, frozen in place. Jywin clutched the bottle tightly, as if it were the most precious thing he had ever received. Outside, the evening sky was already dimming. Jywin walked slowly, replaying the moment again and again in his mind. Minho's smile, his voice, his kindness. Each detail was branded into his memory. But along with the warmth came doubt. "He's the star. I'm just a ball boy," Jywin whispered. "People like him don't notice people like me." And yet, his heart refused to listen to reason. Something about that brief exchange made him hope. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a passing kindness. Maybe it was the beginning of something he didn't dare dream about. The next day, the gym was buzzing with energy again. Players ran laps, the coach barked orders, and the air was thick with determination. Jywin was there, as always, quietly mopping up sweat, handing out towels, and returning balls that rolled astray. To him, it was routine, thankless work that no one noticed. But today, something was different. Every so often, Jywin would catch Minho's gaze flicker toward him. It wasn't long or obvious, just quick glances in between drills. But each one made Jywin's stomach tighten. Am I imagining it? Jywin thought, pressing his lips together nervously. During a break, the team gathered near the benches, laughing loudly as they gulped water. Jywin stayed off to the side, wiping a damp spot on the floor. Suddenly, he felt a shadow loom over him. It was Minho. You always work so hard, Minho said, tilting his head slightly. Don't you ever get tired? Jywin looked up, startled. I'm fine. Really? Minho studied him for a moment, his expression unreadable, before a small smile tugged at his lips. You should take a break once in a while. Even ball boys need rest. The casual word sent a shiver through Jywin. To anyone else, it was meaningless small talk. But to him, it felt like the star of the universe had just reached down to touch his world. Their conversation was cut short when the coach's whistle blared. Minho jogged back to the court, leaving Jywin with his heart pounding like he had just run a marathon. Later that evening, Jywin sat alone on the bleachers after everyone had gone home. The gym was quiet now, only the faint hum of the lights above filling the silence. He pulled out his notebook, a small worn thing he carried everywhere. Inside, the pages were filled with little sketches and notes. Drawings of basketball plays, clumsy doodles of the team, and, though he would never admit it aloud, sketches of Minho's face. His sharp jawline, the way his hair fell over his forehead, the curve of his smile. Jywin stared at one of the sketches and sighed. I must be crazy, he whispered. A ball boy dreaming about someone like him. But he couldn't stop. Even if it hurt, even if it was impossible, his feelings kept growing. The sound of a door creaking startled him. Jywin quickly closed the notebook, stuffing it into his bag. To his horror, Minho stepped back into the gym, his towel slung casually over his shoulders. "Still here?" Minho asked, raising an eyebrow. Jywin's voice cracked. I was just about to leave." Minho smirked, clearly amused. "You're more dedicated than half the players on this team." He walked past, picking up his forgotten jacket. As he turned to leave again, he added, "Don't stay too late. It's not safe." With that, he was gone, the heavy doors closing behind him. Jywin sat frozen on the bench, his cheeks burning. The words echoed in his mind over and over, "Don't stay too late. It's not safe." For the first time in a long while, Jywin felt like someone actually saw him. The following morning, Jywin arrived at school earlier than usual. His bag felt heavier than normal, not because of books but because of the notebook hidden inside. He couldn't stop thinking about the night before, about Minho's words, about the way his smile lingered in Jywin's mind. But reality was always quick to remind him of his place. As he walked down the hall, a group of classmates whispered and laughed behind his back. "There goes the ball boy again. Does he even do anything else? He's like the team's janitor." Jywin lowered his head, pretending not to hear. Their words stung, but he had grown used to it. To them, he wasn't a student worth noticing, just the quiet boy who hovered around the basketball team. During lunch, Jywin slipped away to his usual hiding spot, the back of the gym storage room. It was quiet there, away from prying eyes. He opened his notebook again, tracing his pencil gently over Minho's sketched profile. "Why does it have to be you?" he murmured. His chest tightened with the weight of unspoken feelings. "Why can't I just stop?" The door suddenly rattled and Jywin nearly jumped out of his skin. He shoved the notebook under a pile of towels just as the door opened. "Jywin?" a familiar voice called. It was Minho. Jywin's heart nearly stopped. "Oh? What are you doing here?" "I forgot my sneakers this morning." Minho stepped inside casually, scanning the shelves. His presence filled the cramped space, making Jywin's pulse quicken. As Minho searched, his eyes landed on the towels. He noticed something poking out from beneath them. Before Jywin could stop him, Minho reached over and pulled out the notebook. Jywin's face went pale. Wait. That's not. But it was too late. Minho flipped the pages, his brows raising in surprise as he saw the sketches. Drawings of him. Dozens of them. His face in different angles, his expressions, even the way he held the basketball. Jywin's hands shook violently. "Please give it back." His voice cracked with desperation. For a moment, silence filled the room. Minho stared at the pages, then slowly closed the notebook. He looked at Jywin, not with anger, not with disgust, but with something else. Something unreadable. Finally he spoke. His voice was calm, softer than Jywin expected. "You're really good at drawing." Jywin blinked in shock. What?" Minho handed the notebook back, his lips curving into a faint smile. "I didn't know you had this kind of talent. These sketches, they're amazing." Jywin clutched the notebook to his chest, his face burning red. He didn't know what to say. He had braced himself for mockery, rejection, maybe even cruelty. But instead, Minho's words felt almost like praise. Before Jywin could respond, the school bell rang loudly in the distance. Minho slung his sneakers over his shoulder. "See you at practice," he said casually, as if nothing unusual had happened. And then he was gone, leaving Jywin breathless, his heart hammering against his ribs. That evening, practice stretched late into the night. The sound of sneakers, the squeak of the court, and the sharp whistle of the coach filled the gym. Jywin worked quietly on the sidelines, but his mind wasn't focused on his chores. He couldn't stop replaying the storage room incident, the moment Minho had held his notebook in his hands. He had expected humiliation, mockery, maybe even exposure to the whole team. But instead, Minho's words echoed in his mind like a melody. "You're really good at drawing." The warmth of that compliment lingered long after. When practice finally ended, most players left in groups, chatting and laughing as they disappeared into the night. Minho stayed behind, shooting a few last baskets. His form was effortless, the ball gliding into the hoop again and again. Jywin lingered too, sweeping the floor. He kept sneaking glances at Minho, torn between wanting to speak and fearing the weight of silence. Finally, Minho broke it. "Hey," he called out, grabbing a rebound. "You ever thought about joining the art club?" Jywin nearly dropped his broom. What? And no, his words trailed off. "You've got talent," Minho said matter-of-factly, dribbling the ball lazily. "Better than wasting time just picking up after us." Jywin bit his lip, unsure how to respond. He had never heard anyone say that before. To everyone else he was just a shadow in the background. But Minho saw something more. I like being here, Jywin finally admitted. His voice was quiet, almost embarrassed. Even if it's just on the sidelines. Watching you all play, watching you, he caught himself, his words trailing into silence. Minho raised an eyebrow, a teasing smirk forming on his lips. Watching me, huh? Jywin's face went scarlet. I didn't mean it like that. Minho laughed lightly, the sound warm and unrestrained. He tossed the ball, letting it roll across the floor until it bumped Jywin's foot. Relax. I'm just messing with you. Jywin bent down, picking up the ball. For a moment, his fingers brushed against the leather, and he imagined what it must feel like to hold it with the same confidence Minho had. To stand under the bright lights, not as a shadow, but as someone who mattered. Minho's gaze softened. So, I meant what I said. You've got something special, Jywin. Don't hide it. Jywin's throat tightened. Words failed him, so he just nodded, clutching the ball tightly before handing it back. As Minho walked past, he gave Jywin's shoulder a gentle pat. It was casual, almost nothing, but to Jywin, it felt like electricity sparking under his skin. When the doors finally closed behind Minho, Jywin sat down on the bleachers, his broom forgotten. His heart was racing again, faster than ever. For the first time in his life, the ball boy dared to dream that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't invisible after all. The next few days blurred together. Practice after practice, Jywin kept to his duties, but something inside him had shifted. Minho's words stayed with him. You've got something special. Don't hide it. They were simple, almost careless, but they carried a weight Jywin had never felt before. And Minho, he hadn't stopped talking to him. It wasn't much. Small greetings, casual remarks, but each interaction chipped away at the wall Jywin had built around himself. Of course, not everyone failed to notice. During lunch in the school cafeteria, a group of players huddled together, laughing over jokes only they understood. One of them leaned closer, whispering loudly enough for others to hear. Hey, have you noticed? Our ace keeps hanging around the ball boy. Another snorted. Yeah, weird, right? Why waste time on him? A third chuckled, shaking his head. Maybe Minho feels sorry for the kid. He's always trailing behind like some lost puppy. Their laughter echoed, sharp and cruel. Jywin sat a few tables away, hunched over his tray, trying to make himself small. He didn't need to hear the words, he already knew how people saw him. Invisible. Unimportant. The whispers were nothing new, but now, they stung differently. Because now they involved Minho. That afternoon, while practice was underway, Jywin caught the tail end of another conversation. Two substitutes sat on the bench, muttering between themselves. Do you think Minho actually likes talking to him? Please. He's Minho. He doesn't waste time on nobodies. Jywin's chest ached. He forced himself to focus on wiping the floor, pretending the words didn't cut deep. But Minho noticed. After practice, as the gym emptied, Minho caught up to him. You okay? You've been quiet today. Jywin froze, clutching his mop. I am fine. You're lying. Minho's tone wasn't accusing, just firm. His eyes softened as he stepped closer. Don't listen to them. They don't know you. Jywin's throat tightened. He wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on to those words, but doubt gnawed at his heart. Why are you even nice to me? Jywin finally whispered, his voice trembling. I'm just nobody. I'm not a player. I'm not. Stop. Minho's voice cut through the air, steady and unwavering. He placed a hand on Jywin's shoulder, forcing him to look up. You're not nobody. For a moment, the world seemed to fall silent. Jywin's eyes widened, his breath caught in his chest. The warmth of Minho's touch was grounding, real, undeniable. And yet, just as quickly, Minho stepped back, his expression unreadable. Anyway, he said lightly, picking up his bag, don't let them get to you. See you tomorrow. He left, the sound of the doors closing echoing through the empty gym. Jywin stood frozen, his heart hammering so loudly it hurt. Those words, you're not nobody, burned into him. For the first time he dared to think, maybe Minho meant it. That night, Jywin lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The city outside his window hummed faintly with life, but his mind was far away, in the gym, in that moment when Minho's hand rested on his shoulder. You're not nobody. The words replayed like a broken record, each repetition stirring something he had buried long ago. Hope. But hope was dangerous. Jywin knew better than anyone that reality was cruel. Stars didn't fall for shadows. And yet, Minho's smile, his kindness, his steady gaze, It all felt too real to dismiss. The next day at school, whispers followed Jywin again. He kept his head down, clutching his books tightly. He tried to move quickly through the hallways, but fate had other plans. As he turned a corner, he bumped straight into Minho. Books scattered across the floor. Jywin gasped, scrambling to pick them up, but Minho crouched down beside him, helping without hesitation. "You okay?" Minho asked, handing him a notebook. Jywin nodded quickly, his face red. "Why, yes, sorry." Students nearby stopped to watch. Some whispered, some snickered. The sight of the basketball ace kneeling on the floor to help the ball boy, it was fuel for gossip. "Unbelievable," someone muttered. "He's really hanging around him." Minho ignored them completely. Once Jywin gathered his things, Minho gave him a small smile. "Careful next time. You're too distracted." Before Jywin could reply, Minho was already walking off, casual and unbothered, as though the stares didn't matter. But to Jywin they did. That afternoon, during practice, the tension weighed heavy. Every laugh, every glance from the team felt sharper than usual. Jywin busied himself with his work, but his hands trembled, betraying his nerves. When practice ended, Jywin stayed behind to clean as always. The gym was quiet again, just him and the sound of his mop sliding across the floor. But then, "Hey!" He looked up. Minho stood by the door, his bag slung over his shoulder. He hadn't left with the others. For a moment, Jywin just stared, unsure what to say. "You shouldn't let them get to you," Minho said, his voice steady. "People talk. That's all they do." Jywin swallowed hard. "Why do you keep saying things like that to me?" Minho tilted his head slightly. "Because they're true." Silence stretched between them. Jywin's chest tightened. He wanted to speak, to ask the questions burning inside him. "Why me? Why do you even care?" But the words caught in his throat. Minho took a step closer, his eyes never leaving Jywin's. For a second, the air felt heavy, charged with something neither of them dared to name. But then Minho sighed lightly, breaking the moment. "See you tomorrow, ball boy." He gave a faint grin, then pushed the door open and disappeared into the night. Jywin's knees nearly gave out. He gripped the mop tightly, his heart racing so wildly it was almost painful. It wasn't just admiration anymore. It was something else. Something stronger. Something that terrified him. The weekend arrived, but for Jywin it wasn't rest. He still went to the gym early, making sure everything was ready before the players came in. It had become his comfort zone, empty bleachers, polished floors, and the quiet before the storm of practice. But even in the silence, his mind wouldn't stop. Every word, every glance from Minho replayed endlessly. The water bottle, the compliment, the shoulder pat, the way his voice softened when he said, "You're not nobody." Jywin pressed a hand to his chest as if he could steady the storm inside. "Why does it hurt so much?" he whispered. The sound of footsteps made him jump. He turned, and there was Minho standing at the edge of the court, holding a basketball in one hand. He wore casual clothes today, not the team uniform. "You're here early," Minho said, dribbling the ball lazily as he walked closer. I wanted to clean before everyone else got here," Jywin stammered. Minho stopped in front of him, spinning the ball effortlessly on his fingertip. "You ever play?" Jywin blinked. "Me? No, I've never." "Here." Minho tossed the ball to him. Jywin fumbled, barely catching it against his chest. His palms instantly grew sweaty. "I don't know how." Minho smirked. "Then I'll teach you." Before Jywin could protest, Minho stepped behind him, guiding his hands into place on the ball. His body pressed close, his arms surrounding Jywin's smaller frame. Jywin froze. His heart thundered so loudly he was sure Minho could hear it. "This hand here," Minho said softly, adjusting Jywin's grip. "And the other supports from underneath. Keep your elbows straight." Jywin swallowed hard, his face burning as he tried to focus on the instructions instead of the warmth of Minho's touch. "Now, aim." Minho guided his arms upward, steadying the ball. Together they released it. The ball arced through the air and swished cleanly into the hoop. Jywin gasped. It went in." "Of course it did," Minho chuckled, his breath brushing against Jywin's ear. "You've got me teaching you." Jywin's knees nearly gave out. He stumbled forward, trying to put distance between them, his face flushed. I'm not." "You did good," Minho said simply, cutting him off. His smile was easy, natural, but his eyes held something deeper. For Jywin it was too much. His chest ached with emotions he couldn't name, emotions he was too afraid to admit. He clutched the mop he had left leaning against the wall, hiding behind it like a shield. I should finish cleaning before practice starts. Minho tilted his head, watching him for a long moment but didn't push. Instead, he picked up the ball again and shot casually at the hoop as if nothing had happened. But to Jywin, everything had changed. By the time the rest of the team arrived, Jywin was back in his usual role, quiet, efficient, almost invisible. He swept the floor, carried water bottles, and handed out towels, pretending like nothing had happened earlier. But inside, his heart still trembled from Minho's closeness. The warmth of those strong hands guiding his own lingered on his skin like fire. Unfortunately, not everyone was blind to it. As Jywin moved along the sidelines, two players whispered nearby. Did you see earlier? Minho was with him again. Yeah, teaching the ball boy of all people. What's that about? Jywin kept his head down, pretending not to hear, but the words cut into him like blades. During a break, Minho tossed his towel toward Jywin. Thanks, he said casually, flashing him the same easy grin. The simple act made Jywin's heart skip, but it also drew attention. Several teammates exchanged looks, their smirks sharp and knowing. Careful, Minho, one of them called out with a laugh. People will start thinking you've got a thing for the ball boy. The group erupted into chuckles. Jywin froze, his face burning with humiliation. He wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor and vanish. But Minho didn't flinch. He looked straight at his teammate, his expression calm but firm. So what if I do? He said, his tone carrying a quiet edge. The laughter died instantly. The teasing smiles faltered into silence. Jywin's breath caught. His entire body stiffened, his heart pounding so violently it hurt. He stared at Minho wide-eyed, unable to process what he had just heard. Minho broke the silence with a shrug, spinning the basketball in his hands as if nothing unusual had happened. Less talk, more practice, he said coolly, jogging back onto the court. The others grumbled but obeyed, the moment slipping away as drills resumed. But for Jywin it didn't slip away. Those words, careless, bold, shocking, echoed in his mind. So what if I do? He pressed a trembling hand against his chest, his face burning. Was it a joke? Was Minho just teasing? Or could he have meant it? The thought alone was enough to unravel him completely. After practice ended, the gym slowly emptied. Laughter and chatter faded down the halls until Jywin was alone again, sweeping the last traces of dust from the court. But tonight he wasn't alone for long. The heavy doors creaked open and Minho stepped back inside. His hair was damp from a quick shower, his bag slung casually over his shoulder. Jywin froze mid-sweep. Oh? Did you forget something again? Not really, Minho said, walking across the court. His sneakers echoed against the polished wood. I figured you'd still be here. Jywin's grip on the broom tightened. Oh? Minho stopped in front of him, folding his arms. You always stay late. Don't you ever get tired? Jywin lowered his gaze. It's my job. Minho tilted his head. No one's forcing you to stay this long. Silence stretched between them. Jywin felt the weight of Minho's gaze, heavy and unrelenting. Finally he whispered, if I leave early, it feels like I don't matter. At least here, I'm doing something useful. Minho's brows furrowed. His voice softened. You matter more than you think, Jywin. Jywin's chest tightened painfully. The words sounded too kind, too dangerous. He shook his head quickly. Don't say things like that, you don't understand. Then make me understand. Jywin looked up, startled by the firmness in Minho's tone. The star player's eyes locked with his, unwavering. For a moment, Jywin felt like Minho could see right through him, all the insecurities, the fears, the secret sketches hidden in his notebook. His lips parted, but no words came. Minho sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. You really don't see it, do you? You think you're just a ball boy, but when you're here it's different. The team relies on you more than they admit. And me? His voice trailed off for a moment before he finished quietly. I notice you. Jywin's breath caught. His heart slammed against his ribs so hard it hurt. Before he could reply, the sound of a door slamming down the hall broke the moment. Someone else had entered the building. Voices echoed faintly. Minho straightened, his expression quickly returning to its usual calm. I should go, he said, his voice casual again. Don't stay too late. With that, he turned and walked toward the exit, leaving Jywin trembling in the middle of the court, his broom forgotten. Those 3 words echoed in his mind long after Minho had gone. I notice you. The next morning, whispers had already spread through the school. Jywin could feel eyes following him in the hallway, snickers, smirks, little digs whispered just loud enough for him to hear. The ball boy thinks he's friends with Minho now. Maybe he's following him around on purpose. Pathetic. Jywin gripped his books tighter, willing himself not to react. But their words clawed at his chest. By the time lunch rolled around, he retreated to the back of the gym storage room again. His safe place. He pulled out his notebook, flipping through the sketches of Minho. His fingers trembled as he traced the pencil lines. I should stop, he whispered. If he finds out what I really feel. The door rattled open. Jywin nearly jumped out of his skin, shoving the notebook behind him. Was Minho. Why are you always hiding here? Minho asked, stepping inside. Jywin's voice cracked. I wasn't hiding. Just eating lunch. Minho leaned against the shelf, crossing his arms. You're lying again. Jywin froze. Minho's gaze softened. You let people walk all over you, don't you? Jywin swallowed hard, his throat dry. It doesn't matter what they say. They're right. I'm just... Stop. Minho's voice was sharp, commanding. He stepped closer, his presence filling the small room. I told you before. You're not nobody. So quit saying that about yourself. Jywin's chest tightened painfully. He wanted to believe Minho, but the fear was overwhelming. His voice shook as he whispered, Why do you care? Why me? Minho didn't answer right away. Instead, he crouched down so his eyes met Jywin's. The space between them was small, too small, and Jywin could barely breathe. Because I see you, Minho said finally, his voice low, steady. Even if no one else does. Jywin's lips parted, but no sound came. His heart was thundering too loud, drowning out every thought. For a fleeting moment, Minho's hand twitched, like he wanted to reach out to close the distance between them. But then the school bell rang, shattering the fragile moment. Minho stood up, adjusting his bag strap. His voice returned to its casual tone. Come on. You'll be late to class. He walked out, leaving Jywin trembling in the quiet storage room, his heart spiraling out of control. He sees me. The words echoed again and again, too heavy, too impossible, yet too sweet to let go. Rumors spread like wildfire, but they never quite matched the private moments that lived in the quiet corners of the gym. While classmates gossiped and teammates snickered, Minho and Jywin shared stolen seconds that no one could measure. A hand offered at the right time, a look that said more than words ever could, and small, unmistakable kindnesses that accumulated into something dangerous, hope. One afternoon, a training match drew a larger crowd. Parents, scouts, and students crammed into the bleachers. The air buzzed with tension and excitement. Minho played like a force of nature, fast, decisive, his presence bending the flow of the match. Jywin's job was the same as always, keep the sidelines tidy, chase loose balls, and be invisible. But invisibility fractured the moment Minho slipped on the edge of his shoelace. Time narrowed. Minho stumbled, then caught himself, face twisted with the brief flash of pain that comes when something familiar threatens to fall away. Reflex kicked in. Jywin raced before he even registered the motion, pushing a stray towel into Minho's hand, steadying the world around him. The crowd clapped, the game rolled on, but the exchange left something smoldering in Jywin's chest. His palms were clammy, not from the mop but from the shock of being useful, not for cleaning but for holding a line when it mattered. After the game, the coach called the team together, praising plays, pointing out errors. The players listened, heads bowed under the weight of feedback. Minho, however, walked up to the bench where Jywin stood, and for the first time in front of everyone, handed him a small wrapped package, an old, scuffed training wristband. Here, Minho said, voice carrying a strange mixture of affection and restraint. You saved the moment back there. Wear it. The bench fell silent. A few teammates looked surprised. Some pretended not to notice. Jywin accepted the wristband with trembling hands, the fabric cool and somehow impossibly heavy with meaning. He slipped it on his wrist, an emblem that suddenly made the world tilt. He wanted to say something clever, to hide the fluttering in his throat. Instead, all that came out was a whisper, thank you. Minho's answer was a small smile, then a casual, almost embarrassed shrug. Don't mention it, he said as if the gesture meant nothing. But Jywin knew. He folded the moment into himself like a secret talisman, proof that the star sometimes reached down and saw him. That night, as Jywin walked home clutching the wristband, he wondered what would happen if someone put a name to the feeling. Would it survive daylight and gossip? Could it keep breathing under the weight of rumor? He didn't know. He only knew that when he closed his hand around the woven fabric, his chest felt lighter, and something that had been bowed began to stand straighter. Days slipped by in a rhythm of practices and classes. Each routine was an opportunity for intimacy. passing a bottle, sharing a towel, an accidental brush of fingers as they reached for the same ball. Those small collisions stacked into a language only the two of them recognized. But pressure mounted from outside. One evening, a confrontation took shape, not loud but cold. A senior player, someone with the swagger of entitlement and the cruelty that breeds in seats of power, cornered Jywin near the locker rooms. He smirked like a man who owned the right to judge. "So you and Minho, huh?" he said, voice oily. "You trying to get close to him to ride his coattails? You think he'd care about a rat like you?" Jywin's jaw clenched. The words landed like stones. He wanted to shrink away to let the familiar script of humiliation play out. But the wristband on his arm kept the memory of Minho's fingers there, steady, affirming. Somehow that small fabric made him steadier. Before he could answer, a shadow fell across the doorway. Minho stood there, his expression unreadable. The smirk on the senior's face faltered. Minho's presence was blunt and immediate, a pair of eyes trained to cut through nonsense and refuse to indulge it. "Back off," Minho said simply, voice low and steady. The senior scoffed and backed away, muttering some insult under his breath that dissolved in the air. As he left, he shot one last poisonous look at Jywin, like a man leaving garbage behind. Minho turned to Jywin then, the tension in his shoulders easing. "You okay?" he asked, as if he had not just performed some small rescue, as if it were nothing. Jywin felt a rush of gratitude so intense it nearly bloomed into tears. "I'm fine," he lied, the word brittle. He didn't want to appear weak or needy in front of Minho, not now. Minho crouched to meet his eyes, serious and soft at the same time. "You don't have to take that," he said. "You don't deserve that." He spoke it like an obvious truth, the kind that ought to be universally recognized. Jywin's chest swelled with both shame and relief. Shame because the statement felt like what he'd always known, and relief because someone at last was willing to speak it aloud. They stood there, an unspoken promise passing between them. The world could try to bruise them, but they would not let it break this quiet connection. Intimacy deepened in 1,000 tiny increments. On rain-soaked afternoons when practice was canceled, they lingered in the empty gym, trading confidences and jokes. On a day when Minho's mood darkened for reasons he wouldn't explain, Jywin simply sat beside him, offering the kind of silence that heals. One evening, with thunder muttering in the distance, Minho nudged Jywin with his shoulder as they watched a film the coach had left on in the lounge. The screen glowed while shadows played across the ceiling. "You ever think about the future?" Minho asked suddenly, voice softer than the image's flickering light. Jywin considered the question. "Not really," he admitted. "My future always felt small. Close to here. Close to what I know." Minho was quiet for a long moment. "I want to go pro," he said finally, eyes on the screen. "I practice every day for that. But sometimes," he paused, then met Jywin's eyes, intensity shining. "Sometimes I think about things I can't say out loud." Jywin's heart lurched. "Like what?" Minho looked suddenly lighter, unburdened by the confession. "Like whether I'll have anyone waiting for me. Whether there's someone I can be honest with." The sentence hung between them, fragile, risky. Jywin's breath snagged on the possibility. The gym felt smaller, more private, as if the rest of the world had been politely asked to step outside. Minho's hand brushed Jywin's and lingered, not quite meeting full touch but close enough to set skin humming. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "Just be here." In that moment, the gym was not a place of hierarchy. It was a place where two people could exist without labels. Just voices, just warmth, just the sound of breath mixing with the low hum of the lights. Jywin rested his head on the back of a chair and allowed himself to be present. For once, the future could wait. Rumors didn't disappear with confessions. They mutated. Social media posts, a shared photo here and there, and little whispers that ballooned into smears. The scrutiny intensified as scouts and parents noticed Minho's skill. With attention came probes into his personal life, and fans loved to invent narratives. One evening, Jywin stumbled reading a group chat aloud to himself. Mean comments about his role, jokes about his closeness, guesses that slapped labels on a relationship before it had even been named. The cruelty was clinical, perfunctory. He wanted to shut it down. But the more he tried to shield himself, the louder the world rang. He retreated into himself, drawing lines around his feelings like fragile glass. Minho noticed. He always noticed. That night, when the gym emptied and the crickets outside called the day to rest, Minho found Jywin sitting on the stage, the folded legs of his notebook clasped between his fingers. "Don't let them write your story," Minho said quietly, sitting down beside him. Jywin's voice was thin. "But they already did. They're shouting it for everyone to hear." Minho's hand found his. This time there was no hesitation. Fingers laced, simple and deliberate. The squeeze was steady. We'll write our own, Minho stated firmly. Not what anyone else says. Ours. For the first time, Jywin allowed himself to imagine. Imagine not the journalists, the whispers, the inevitable tests, but instead small, immediate things. Laughing together in the rain, practicing free throws side by side in the winter, sharing so quiet that it feels like speechless nights. These weren't grand promises. They were possibility, tender and terrifying and completely his. When Minho leaned his shoulder against Jywin's, the contact was small but entire. The world outside could do its worst. Rumors, sneers, and the precarious balancing act of public life. Inside the gym, in the warm afterglow of lights turned low, they were two people who had found one another. A month of days stitched into a new normal. Training, practice, shared glances, and the steady building of trust. People still talked. Some avoided them, others stared, but the core of their daily lives shifted from hiding to being quietly bold. On a crisp morning before dawn, Minho asked Jywin to meet him at the court. The place glinted silver under the rising sun. Dew clung to the rims and the world felt clean, ready for something honest. Minho was waiting with a single basketball tucked under his arm, sunlight burning a halo around him. He looked at Jywin, not with a performance for anyone else, but with a private intensity that belonged only to the two of them. I have something to ask, Minho said. His voice was level, but his hands betrayed a little nervousness as he shifted the ball. Not about practice, not about games. Something real. Jywin swallowed, the air thick in his throat. What is it? Minho stepped closer, lowering his voice to the kind of sincerity that makes confessions safe enough to survive. Will you stay with me for this? Not as a shadow or as a joke. Will you be by my side? If things get messy with people and rumors and expectation, will you lean on me and I on you? The question was simple and enormous all at once. Jywin felt the weight of it, an invitation to belong with no caveats. He looked at the wristband on his arm, then at Minho's steady face, the player who'd once seemed untouchable, now asking to cross a line that had always felt barred. Yes, Jywin breathed. The word felt like confession and triumph and surrender all wrapped together. I'll stay. Minho's smile broke open like a sunrise. He reached out and, without fanfare, slid a second wristband over his own wrist, the match to Jywin's. The two bands side by side looked like a promise. They stood there a long time, neither speaking. The court, the empty seats, the cool air, everything was small and bright and clear. In that silence, they let themselves be young and frightened and overwhelmingly, stubbornly in love. And when the first coach's whistle blew, signaling practice, signaling the world, they walked onto the court together. One player, one ball boy, and a truth neither rumor nor fear could hollow out.